again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. Today, I'm talking with Brock Wissmiller, a double graduate from this university with a Bachelor of Arts in 2007 and a Master of Science in Sport Management in 2009. Is that right, Brock? Did I get those correct?
That's correct. It was a long time that I was in Macomb, and when you hear that, and then working full time, if someone were to tell me back when I started in 2003, hey, you're going to spend 8 years here, I would have had flashbacks to Tommy Boy of, lots of people go to college for 7 years and they're called doctors. I didn't quite get the doctor level, but walked out of there with 2 degrees and full-time experience. So those going way back into that timeline for me. I think you got those dates right.
Well, let's update everybody where you are, what's going on in your life.
Yeah, absolutely, Buzz. I'm currently working as the Senior Associate Athletics Director at Upper Iowa University. Just finished 10 years working here, so I've officially spent more time in rural Iowa than I did in rural Illinois. But I've been working here for 10 outstanding years. We're near my wife's family. She grew up just about 30 minutes away from here, which was part of what kind of brought us to this area. And that was following up my time working full-time in the athletics department at Western Illinois, which came right after school. So that gets you quickly up to speed on where I'm at here. But I mentioned my wife. We met actually as grad assistants at Western Illinois. We're married in Macomb, and now, as I said, we've been living in Iowa for the past decade here. Been married for 11 years, and we have 2 children, and an 8-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. So
yeah, awesome. And awesome names, Colt and Ellie. I think that's just perfect. I'm so happy for you and Becky both that you have 2 kids and you started life and you're out there doing wonderful things. It's a little amazing to me, Brock, I have to be honest, that any former student of mine has the term senior in his title, because they feel, if you're a senior, then what am I?
That is a good point. Here's what I could tell you in the world of college athletics. When they can't pay you more, they just add words to your title. And so I started as an assistant athletics director. Then I became associate athletics director, and then it was, well, you've been here long enough, and okay, so now you're a senior associate athletics director. And I said, what does that mean? It says you got more titles. That was about it. There wasn't much else to come with it, and that's unfortunately that's where college athletics mirrors broadcasting quite a bit. The pay ain't always that great, but the work is a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, let's start at the beginning for Brock. I think you're is it from Downers Grove? Is that where you're from?
That's correct. That's a pretty good memory there, or good Facebook stalking, one of the two, I'm sure.
Well, so. I do remember you were from the area, from the Chicago area, and that let's talk about how you got into the realm of sports, because you were an athlete, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about how I feel like lucked into you coming to WIU. So talk about your interest in sports growing up.
Yeah, it was, I was just I guess I was the kid that was too dumb to realize whether he was or wasn't good enough. I just liked playing, and so, in hindsight, looking back at it, certainly working in college athletics, now I get a very good firsthand view of Division I at Western Illinois, Division II here at Upper Iowa, and a lot of Division III and NAI. And I realized that, if you want to, you can play college sports, you can be there. But I didn't know that at the time. So baseball was really my passion. Football was the sport I played for fun, and basketball was the one where I really didn't want to do anything else. So I played 3 sports year round. Was I great at any of them? No, but baseball was where my passion was, and I really wanted to play college baseball. My senior year in high school, I went to Montini Catholic High School, which is in the suburbs of Chicago, and anybody from the state of Illinois knows they're a pretty good football powerhouse, and very high level football play in there. And was able to, was good enough to play on the team there, in high school, and suffered a spinal concussion, actually, my senior year of high school. It was kind of a freak play where I went to make a tackle, collided with a teammate, ended up face down on the ground. And the feeling of being at the bottom of a dog pile, people are just like laying on top of you. Imagine, anybody that's played sports some way, played football, like touch football, anything like that, you kind of know that feeling like, hey, you got somebody on top of you, just waiting for people to get off. And that pressure never relieved. And I was paralyzed on the football field. And my friend tried to, say, Brock, get up. And I tried to speak and I was mumbling. So got taken to the hospital, backboarded, MRI, CT scan, all these different tests to find out I had a spinal concussion, which, like a brain concussion, kind of can play some immediate havoc and then have some long-term, effects. So I actually, what got me to Western was that night in the hospital. I'm sitting there, and my parents are in the room with me. And Buzz, my folks from the time at Western, they're there. As a parent now, I can understand. I mean, I knew they were scared. Now I understand how scared out of their minds they were about what was going on with me. But I kind of drifted off to sleep, and I had this vision of an older me, I guess you could say a senior me, if you will, playing catch with a young boy. And I wake up, I'm 17 years old here, a senior in high school. And I wake up and I realize I kind of had this vision of me playing catch with my son, with a future son. I wasn't married. I didn't have a girlfriend or anything at the time. I was living the good life in high school, Buzz, which is a nice way of saying there was no girls interested in me at that time. So, but anyways, the last thing on my mind was family, like starting my family. I wanted to play college baseball. And so I woke up and I realized it was kind of this God touch. And someone explained that to me much later in life, that's what they felt like it was. And I think it was true. It was this, you tap on your shoulder, and it was, God touch, God saying, hey, pay attention to something here. And it opened my eyes and the realization that, what, there's life beyond sports. There's other things out there. And wouldn't you rather be able to walk at age 35 than be, maybe resigned to a chair or having a walking cane or something? At this point, I didn't have the analysis of what I had. They hadn't even diagnosed my spinal concussion. But that moment right there, I made the decision I wasn't going to play sports anymore. I was done competitively. I wasn't going to try to pursue college baseball like I wanted to. I think it was about 3 weeks later. I was not playing football. I was on, going through physical therapy and recovery. My parents and I, we took a visit to Western Illinois, and it was just the standard, this was before your genius of the broadcasting student visit days. Like, I didn't really even know broadcasting was in my future. I've listened to some of these other chats and seen some of the people that knew coming in, this is what they were going to do and why Western was their place. But I came on campus, and I believe football was playing. I believe they were playing Indiana State. There was just that I had this like kind of fixed in my memory when I came to visit. And obviously you were tied up with the broadcast. The truck was parked outside the stadium there outside of Hanson Field. And I just looked, and we're walking with a tour group while the game's going on. And they said, yeah, that's our broadcast department there. And students get to be involved with it. And I just looked at my parents and I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. And obviously the visit of Western in general, just going through it was what sold us on, like, this was the right place for me to go to school. But just seeing the production truck parked outside the press box at Hanson Field and them saying, yep, students get to do that. That was what was kind of like, hey, I'm here for a reason. I was kind of, thinking about considering broadcasting as my future. And I just said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to that. So I don't have this like, yeah, I knew what I was going to do. It just kind of all happened organically for me. And that's, what got me to Western Illinois was the fact that I was paralyzed playing high school football, but making that decision to, give up college or to give up the dream of college sports. And yet here I am, 20 some years later from when I was injured, saying I wasn't going to play college sports to now basically my whole life revolves around college sports. So
right. No, it's a great perspective, though, I think, in appreciation for the role of sports, but also, to have a complete life experience, that and put things in perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That certainly have a lot of perspective. And the best part about the whole story that I guess the romantic part about it is that, I have a son, Colton, now at 8 years old, and coached his baseball team the past couple of years. And we have numerous games to catch. We have, awesome. we do that. Yeah. And I'll never forget. And actually I have it here sitting. I'm not going to dig it out from the other side of my desk, but when he was born in February. So he was, 7-8 months old. We were watching the World Series in 2013, and he had this little foam ball, and he kind of like dropped it, threw it toward me. I turned to my wife, Becky, and I go, that counts, that's catch. And I grabbed the ball and I go, he doesn't get this back. And that was like the moment for me of like, hey, I had my first game of catch with my son. Like I made it, made it to this vision that I had no idea what it was. But yeah, there's lots of games of catch, as you can probably imagine, in my household. So
Yeah, and I often think about, sometimes when you mentioned that you have a son, because while you were a student, I mean, my son was in the same kind of situation, and for many of you guys, whether you realized it or not, I mean, this is, all the students really have a special place in my heart. But all you guys that I dealt with on a regular basis, sort of an adopted son status always with me. So
plus you had tape on all of us. So you could take those tapes home and sit down with your son and be like, okay, be like this guy. Do not be like this one right here. You see this guy over here? Do not. And I'm sure you had that luxury too of having the dirt on all of us. So.
Well, I think a few times my son would come in and sit in the truck and watch the actual production. And then I said, do you want to do this every week? He's like, no, thanks. I think he got a little too, saw the intensity of an actual production and what it was like. And said, no, that's okay. I don't want any part of that.
I think probably some of the crew that was working, he was probably just there for the Domino's pizza above anything else. And that was the one thing that I can thank for, is that I don't think I really got the beer gut, but I definitely got the Domino's gut from working games for the TV station.
So let's talk about your early involvement and in the broadcasting program. What do you remember, and how did you get involved?
I remember, again, showing up as a blurry-eyed freshman that had no idea what he was doing, like had no experience. And I don't remember the exact circumstances of how I got on the dog, but I had a Sunday morning shift my first semester on campus. I think you were teaching the intro to broadcasting class, like our very first class that we took, where we had to do some of the, and I know I've heard, I think Denise and Brian, others talk about the, where you talked over the PowerPoint on channel 3 or whatever it was.
WAXS.
WAXS. So I think we did some shifts for there or something, but I think I remember, and it must have been you because you taught the course, but it was, hey, we've got airtime. If you want to sign up for an air shift on the dog, to any students that current students are listening, there was no automation. There was a drawer of mini discs if you wanted to venture on the navigating the mini discs, and there was a wall of CDs.
That's right.
And it was, you come in and take an air shift. And I think at that time we were maybe just drifting away from playlists. I think there wasn't students actually running or writing playlists anymore, but I got a Sunday morning shift and just came in, played music, talked into a microphone, stuff I had never done before. I had no experience of it. But I was just getting behind the microphone. The biggest thing that I do remember from that, though, and you remember Pat Ryan from broadcasting. He was he ended up kind of just helping me with that shift. He just came on and we kind of co-hosted it, and just we were going to be hanging out talking anyway, so we figured why not do it on the air, and we played checkers live on the air one day because it's Sunday morning. We're like, nobody's listening anyways. We brought a checkerboard in and we kind of did like play-by-play of us playing checkers and yelling at each other and fighting over the game, and just had fun. But immediately following us was Mark Moses. And it was Mark and Freddie Mardisi and I think Brad Vesper, and then a rotation of a few other people, but doing sports talk. And that was the first time I guess they had ever done sports talk on the dog. And they took us kind of similar to me, like, yeah, hey, where's there an available time? We'll jump in and do it. And that's what they did. They did a Sunday morning or afternoon sports talk for a couple hours. Got to know Mark really well. Just through that. And I say really well in that you get 5 minutes of his time here and there before he gets on the air. And somebody that's obviously made a career out of sports talk, but that was that exposure to me, and seeing him as somebody that took, I hate to say a non-traditional path, but he kind of carved his own path of what he wanted to do. He wasn't a play-by-play guy. He did some games, called them, but he even said, that's not where he was meant to be. He's a talker. Anybody that knows Mark, is he's somebody you sit down, you have a conversation with, and 3 hours pass by and you don't know what the heck just happened. So he was somebody that, again, just kind of showed me, hey, make your own path, whatever it is. And really that's kind of what I did from there, with my experience. And so that first year was really just air shifts on the dog, taking classes, doing whatever I could, and just trying to be around and absorb, because there was a lot of talent walking around Sully Hall at that time. And to be honest, as a freshman that had zero experience coming in, it was a little intimidating and overwhelming. But that changed for me that year, and I maybe getting ahead, but we had tryouts in the springtime for announcers for the next fall, and that was anchors I remember you would just set up the studio, and you'd be in the control room, and it was just roll tape. And if you were applying or auditioning to be a news anchor, you did some stories. If you were doing sports, you did a highlight package. If you're doing play-by-play, you had a football clip. And I signed up. I'm like, yep, I'll just jump in for a time and do it. I'm going to see how good I am at this, and thinking I was just going to try it alone. So I'm sitting in the studio, and in walks Brian Moore. And you walk in and say, "Hey, Brock, this is Brian." I'm like, "Yeah, Buzz, I know who the hell he is. You don't have to tell me. Like, here's Brian Moore. He's gonna audition with you." And I said, "Oh, okay." I kind of laughed, and I'm thinking, "Well, sure as heck not getting this." So we go through it, and of course Brian's natural talent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was no means. I mean, Brian was a constant professional, but I mean, he could have been Ron Burgundy with a glass of scotch and a cigarette sitting there, and just turned and looked at the camera and done better than anybody ever did. But so I'm sitting there with Brian, and I just go through it, don't really think, and I think we took turns. Like, he did play-by-play first, and I did commentary, and then we just did a second cut where we flip-flopped, and I did it, and we get done. He's like, "Good job, Brock," and he walks out, and you called me then a few weeks later, or whatever, and said, "Hey, we're gonna, you didn't make the TV cut," which was no shock to me at all. But he goes, "We're gonna try doing radio. We're gonna try doing radio at football games this year. We haven't done that before for all the games." And then you added this piece in, which changed my whole perspective. He said, Brian told me, he goes, "This kid's got some talent. He's got it." And just that little assurance from somebody like Brian, who was kind of a god walking around those halls at that time with his level of talent for play-by-play, put me at ease of like, okay, this is the right thing to try. And so that got me into doing the games on the radio, and I became really more of a radio person at that point for sports play-by-play, and did that, and did some basketball games and baseball games and stuff then my sophomore year, and felt like things were going well. But I think then after my sophomore year, that's when I really think sports broadcasting at Western really changed. And what came next for me was just I almost get a little emotional sitting here thinking about it, because if not for what happened next, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today.
Yeah, and that's a great opportunity at that period of time to really have our students not only broadcast, especially like men's and women's basketball, but have an opportunity to travel with the team, which I think was about also learning to be adults, learning to, part of that was developing your character and understanding that you're representing not just yourself, but you're representing the department, the university, and in that case, athletics when you're on the road.
Yeah, and that was, I was fortunate enough to get to travel, and I think back, I did not, I guess, live in the moment enough when I did some traveling with football. I was doing sideline camera work while Brian Moore and Mike Kirkhoff were doing the road broadcast for the games, and so it was the three of us traveling. And I think Kyle Durkin was traveling as a writer for the Courier. Now, talk about one thing, when I was definitely the oddball out there. Like, I was the person out of place for their talent. Kyle was a very good writer, no doubt. Brian and Mike, I mean, Brian, perfect as a play-by-play guy, and Mike, quite frankly, just put him into anything with his personality, he's going to succeed. But the four of us, traveling for a season with Western Illinois football, and Coach P, and that was kind of the start of it. And I don't know how much that contributed to, but I know then it was leading into, this would have been 2005, I believe, in the fall there. The commercial stations in Macomb decided to drop women's basketball from their coverage. They were going to still, Michael Jones, who still works in athletics there at Upper Iowa, was the play-by-play guy, and I think he did mostly just football and men's basketball. I don't know if he did much for the women's team, but the commercial stations decided they weren't going to carry the women's games anymore. And I don't know what the process was, where you were contacted, if Sharon, or who reached out to whom from athletics, but Next thing I know is I get a call from you, and it was myself and Matt Workema, and we got called in and said, we're going to carry women's basketball in the dog. And thinking, okay, we've already done that. Like we've done games. And it was, we're going to be the flagship station for women's basketball. And that was where I think I might have peed my pants a little bit, because it was, by the way, you two are going on the road, and we got a meeting with Coach Crane. At this time, Western Illinois women's basketball had won 3 straight mid-con titles going into Zane Talane's senior year. And the student broadcasters were going to become the flagship station. I know Coach Crane very well. I spent 2 years traveling with them. I don't think she shared my excitement when she found out that a couple of students were going to be traveling with the team to broadcast the games. And I can attest to that, because that was where I really grew up, I think, as a professional, was traveling with that team, because we had something to prove. We really needed to prove that we were there to serve that team in the proper manner, a team that was going for its 4th straight conference championship, and achieved that conference title. And that was where, again, I think I really started to step forward into okay, this isn't just about being a student. This isn't just about my education. This is about setting myself up for something bigger. At the time, I thought it was setting myself up to, become a play-by-play guy. I'm going to have this on my resume, and nobody else is going to, even be able to compare to it. So I really leaned in on that, not realizing the experience I was gaining to become an athletic administrator, from that time. So get on the road with women's basketball that season, phenomenal year. We go to Wisconsin and beat the Badgers in the Kohl Center that season. We knocked off Ohio University. One of the losses I remember was we lost at the Ohio State, who was a top 5 program in the country that year. And in women's basketball, you've got like your top 5 and then everybody else. Like there's not, at that time, there wasn't people really nipping at the top. Usually the number 1 seeds all got to the Final Four type of thing. And Ohio State was one of those programs that was up there. Like that's the team that was able to beat us, with it. And so just went through that whole experience of traveling with the team in airports, on bus rides, doing this thing, and getting to know the coaches and the staff and the, administration that way. Because the ADs or assistant ADs and stuff, like they would sometimes travel or they'd be around. And again, totally naive, much like how I got to Western, how I got, totally naive to what was unfolding around me. But I got that experience through being a broadcaster and through your guidance. And Roger, who was not a sports guy by any means. Like it was not, he was Weekend Rewind on WJEQ. We like, that was Roger's bit. He was a DJ and he was damn good at that. But he would chime in, Brock, you need to try this. You need, like, personality wise, and Don Norton. Like all of a sudden I had you as professors coming to me saying, Brock, do this, Brock, do that, versus me saying, hey, how can I get better? So just all of a sudden it was like, okay, people see something here in me, in the department, and, and I just had to lean into that and take that responsibility on. So it forced me to grow up. I'll be honest, it pulled me away a little bit from some of the college experience. I attended a lot less house parties. And in Macomb, there's plenty of those to go around. So the fact that you can maybe avoid them is an accomplishment in of itself. But it did force me to grow up, a little bit there and make those decisions of I'm doing this for my career. And some of that college experience is going to put on hold. But I think I'm definitely reaping the benefits and rewards of that now.
Yeah, that was a huge commitment and ask of a student to do that at that period of time, to say, you're going to be traveling like a student athlete would, which is, again, great preparation for your careers, to understand that this was a full-time commitment to that, and to act professional when you, at that period of time. And what I always appreciated, that established credibility in some ways for our program with athletics, which was a little intimidating for me, to be honest, because I felt like saying not every student is going to be as good as Brock or Matt or all the students that followed at that period of time. They all ended up being just as great as you were in terms of their behavior and understanding the importance of what they were doing, because this was again an extension not only of the University of Athletics, but it was of our program, and it allowed for others to follow. And that's what I always try to, communicate, is that you were part of this legacy, and for others. And that's what I always appreciated.
Yeah, it was, again, the nice part is when you're naive to things, like you didn't know, I didn't, like, none of us knew what that could be.
Right.
Coach Crane knew what it couldn't be. she had that, panned out pretty well. But that was just it, though, is that, none of us really knew. Like, she knew the standard she wanted to be. And so that was kind of the cool part, was we just got to try. And I think it did. I know it laid some good foundation and groundwork, and I know it allowed you to just expand upon it, because mistakes that I made, mistakes that, collectively made, allowed future students to not have to live through those pains and not have to deal with that, and just take themselves to that next level even faster. So I had no problem being that guinea pig. No, not at all.
Along with Matt Workema, as you said,
Yep.
in your second year was with Plomas. Is that right?
Yeah. So the second year was really interesting, because it was, Zane had graduated, and women's basketball won 4 straight titles. And so it was kind of, we knew women's basketball probably wasn't going to be matched in the same level. You don't replace a 6'7" Latvian center just overnight in women's college basketball at a low mid-major school. So we weren't really sure. I think you and I kind of had this discussion about, okay, what are we going to do? Like, I guess I'd kind of assumed you were going to let me keep doing the games, but it was, what's next? Because we didn't really have that natural next person coming in. Chad Reuter had started doing some stuff, but he wasn't really crazy about color or radio. Like, he was wanting to get more into TV a little bit at that time, I believe. And then there were some younger students, and it was, I think the big concern was maturity level, of it. So I don't remember who it was conversation wise, but we kind of started brainstorming. And somebody said, well, what about Matt Plomas? And I'm actually like, well, what about him? Great guy, funny, good to be around. He doesn't do sports. And somebody said, yeah, but there's personality there. And that's when it clicked. And that was when we really changed what we did, because the prior year, we were just, Workman and I were just sports guys, following a team around, being sports guys. Plomas came along, and all of a sudden we were a show. Like, there was some entertainment value in what we were doing. And to be honest, we needed that, because the prior year, Workman and I didn't need to do anything. The game sold itself. They were dominant. There's plenty to talk about. And then going to that next year, it was going to be a struggle. You're going for 5 titles in a row, and we didn't get there. So when you don't get there, that's a nice way of saying you're going to lose some more games, and you were going to struggle a little bit. And it was a young team, and they were going to struggle. And so on the radio side of it, you've got that option of, you're calling everything. You can't, let the pictures do the talking. So do you criticize, or do you entertain? And when you're the student station, and you're the flagship station covering with the team, you can't be overly critical. You've got to be honest, but you've got to find some space in there. And I didn't realize that coming in doing the play-by-play, how valuable a Matt Plomas was going to be. And what that has taught me is really to take a step back and really evaluate the people around you. What are their natural talents? Maybe not what are they wanting to do, or what does it look like they're good at. Matt Plomas's natural talent was to entertain people. And whether he was a news anchor or a color guy for women's basketball radio, he did just that. And I tell you, I laughed more on the air doing games with him than I probably should have. But it was just that I'd set him up with something, or turn it over to him during a little break, and he would just like have a one-liner or something ready to go. And then I'd have to kill my mic because I'm laughing over what he just said. And I think at that point, that really changed my eyes to just what sports broadcast can be, live sports broadcasting, that it really is. And I equate it to the greats of like the Pat Hughes and the Vin Scullys and even the Bob Euchers. People tune into them because it's a show. They get to hear about the game, but there's entertainment value. And that was something I think we really had going on that second year, my senior year with Plomas and I.
There's a story, and I don't know if I've ever heard this, that you had told me in our sort of preparation of doing a morning talk show from a bathroom in Tulsa. I don't know that story. How did that happen?
Yeah. So the Mid-Con, or it might have been Summit League at that point, one of whatever the conference tournament was in Tulsa at a Oklahoma high school gym, Union High School, which was an arena. It was an insane venue for a high school to play in, and we had the conference tournament there. So um, the MidCon or Summit League office, they did a really good job of welcoming in student broadcasters. They would accommodate them, we treat us just like any other media member that was there covering it, and they would put on a little student media forum even. It would be one morning of the tournament. They would gather a couple writers, a couple radio guys, put them in, and we'd have a panel discussion and just talk about the industry and stuff. So there was that kind of perk of like, hey, we should go and cover because there's also professional development going on there. So John Reedy was there, I was there, Plomas, Kyle Durking. I can't remember the whole list, but somebody had a morning shift on the dog, and that was their class requirement. And I think they had the pass. Like if they would have missed their air shift that week, it was okay. Like they were down there working, but we had the radio equipment, and someone's like, well, why wouldn't we just phone in from Tulsa, like do a remote, part of the morning show? So we're like, okay, we'll just do it from a hotel room. Well, as you can imagine, a bunch of college students on the road at a hotel. We had a late night, and but I think it was John Reedy and TJ Carson, which for anybody listening that knows those two names understands how ridiculous that morning show must have been. I mean, TJ involved in anything would be just that, but TJ and John, and so John was phoning in, and the room he was staying in, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was a handicap room, whatever, had a phone in the bathroom. And I think he was staying with Kyle Durking. And so John just said, well, I'm just going to do the show in the bathroom so I don't wake up Kyle, because he was going to be on at like 7 a.m. or something. It was an early morning shift. So all of a sudden, like, text message, we're all like, hey, we're doing a radio show from John's bathroom. Like, so like then all of a sudden, like 4 of us are in there. Kyle wakes up, and John was sitting in the bathtub with a headset on. Tub's dry, but he's sitting in there, and like someone else was sitting on the counter, and like we're just passing the headset and microphones around, doing a talk show, and like by far like the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and probably has ever happened. And it sounds like Buzz, probably much to our success. You and the faculty were never the wiser about what we were doing down in Tulsa with the radio equipment. So,
I thought it was interesting. And I appreciate that you've given your appreciation and credit to our faculty, but somebody that you also mentioned, which I think does not get enough credit, is Tom Durso. Because of all the things that Tom did behind the scenes for people and tried to steer them in particular ways in his own manner. Can you talk about how Tom sort of impacted you?
Yeah, I didn't smoke, so I didn't have that connection with him. I mean, every broadcasting student that was a smoker was probably pretty good friends with Tom. Like, and like, but I realized that early on. Show up and you see the guy with the long hair and the awesome mustache, and you're like, okay, what's this guy's deal? He's wearing a Hawaiian shirt. It took me a little while to figure out what he did, and so then see him at the games and stuff, and then I start to realize when I'm doing the radio, radio stuff, like radio takes no time to set up. You plug in the sport mix thing, you make sure the phone line's working, and then you wait. If you've done your homework, you just wait till your pregame show starts. So I just go and hang out by the truck and talk with Tom. And Tom was one of those people where, I mean, he obviously wasn't a faculty member. He was an engineer. He was there, but he would answer every question. And once I picked up on that he was the type of person that just liked to engage in conversation, I just started asking questions. Why do we do this? Would it make more sense to do this here, to set this camera up here? No, and here's why. And cabling and audio and running all that, and then kind of getting a glimpse inside the truck every once in a while. He never like gave me the cold shoulder. He never didn't answer a question. And then all of a sudden I start to realize, I didn't do production. Like I never pushed the buttons on the switcher. I don't think I ever worked a game from inside the production truck, to be honest. But I knew that thing. I knew how it was set up because I talked with Tom. I'd ask him when I go to check out a camera. It wasn't okay, camera go, leave. It was I would BS with Tom for 5 minutes or so. And I know I know he appreciated that. I don't know
Yeah.
if he understands how much I and some others did. Um, Fast forward to my time here in Upper Iowa, and I got hired here partially because they were getting a video board. They were renovating the football stadium. Had a huge $7.5 million gift, brand new video board going in, and they needed somebody to run it. And I said, well, yeah, I've done broadcasting, at the time. And then after I said that, on the interview, I'm like, oh shoot, wait, that's actually video. My expertise was somewhere else. But then all of a sudden it all came back. Every lesson I learned from Tom, I mean, and everything in class too, don't get me wrong, but everything I learned from Tom all of a sudden like jumped to the forefront. And we started working on buying equipment, getting a TriCaster and a 3-play unit, and talking about fiber runs and again, things that he didn't really even do. But all of a sudden I'm like, okay, fiber cabling, like it's the same thing. We just have different connectors on the end. So all of a sudden, as we're renovating our football stadium, putting in this video board and setting up a video production, all of that knowledge from Tom just came rushing back. And I did it all. And then when people are asking me, well, why are we setting this up here? Because if we do it here, it's going to make it easier on the camera person because we're not going to deal with the sideline there. We're not going to, all these different things. And I'm like, Tom's words are starting to come out of my mouth, which is really scary, terrifying for anybody. I'm like, maybe I'm not going to keep this job if I'm not too careful here. But all of a sudden that Durso influence is there. And again, just my technical knowledge, I didn't think existed, but it did because Tom was always so willing to give of it and just be a good person to talk with and work with. And now, with all that, with the equipment we got, the TriCaster and stuff, we were able to take that experience just from producing our video board. And now we actually have games carried live on KCRG's digital channels out of Cedar Rapids, the ABC affiliate there. We've been doing that now probably 7 years, I think, maybe 6 or 7 years. And they carry our games live on TV. So people think Macomb is small. Fayette, Iowa has 1,100 residents and no stoplights. I mean, that's where our university is. And we are originating broadcast for 60 to 70 games a year between football and basketball and soccer and all this. And really, Tom Durso is a big part of why that is, because I would have never known what I was doing there. I'd have had to learn on the fly. We would have had to contract it out, whatever. But because of that, and then really, Buzz, the model you brought about, the two of you, and you could probably tell me, I don't know if you want to remember how many nights you and Tom were in that truck and how many games you set up for and how much frostbite you got outside of Western Hall in the winter and all that. But the concept that you utilized of student broadcasters, students are running everything. I brought here, and we don't have a broadcasting department. So it wasn't like we've got these willing students. It was, hey, do you want to come do this? And we'll teach you. And but your words and Tom's words all of a sudden coming out of my mouth talking to students here, and we got that broadcast deal going with KCRG, and started it without anybody that was had any type of broadcasting experience. It was totally run by students though, and just like we did at Western. And was it as good? Not quite. We were pretty vanilla on what we did, but we did a broadcast, and that was the cool part about it. So that's where I'm just forever grateful. And that when I left Western, because I did my undergrad, did grad school, worked in the SID office, and then 2 years doing play-by-play for Western Illinois football. When I left, I thought, oh, I'm like, this is me throwing away my broadcast degree. Like that was really what I kind of thought was happening. And I get here and I realize I have used that degree and my experience and my learning from you and from Tom and everybody, but especially you and Tom on the technical side, to help move this small Northeast Iowa institution forward to where now we have a brand that's unique in Eastern Iowa, because if you can believe it, we actually have more games broadcast over the air than the Iowa Hawkeyes do in this area, because you got the Big Ten Network and you've got all those other contracts. They have more exposure, don't get me wrong. But if you look at over the air and in a rural setting, people sitting at home with a digital antenna on a farmhouse, they can get as many of our games as they can Iowa games at this point.
Well, that's great exposure for your program. And that's why, when it gets, I remember having conversations with Tom and we would be really ambitious about, let's continue to add, let's do soccer, let's do men's and women's soccer, let's do volleyball, let's do I think when we said, let's do swimming and diving. And
Yeah, you pulled me out of retirement on that one.
think
I
we
was
did.
a grad student then. Oh, I wanted to slap you after that one because that was
I mean,
it was an embarrassing experience because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but man, it was fun though too.
Yeah, it was. And, part of it, I remember Tom saying, you're going to run these kids ragged. And I'm like, they'll let me know. And
Yep.
no one ever stopped,
No.
because it was another opportunity. And that's what you're trying to do. There's the exposure part, which is terrific for the program, but then there's the opportunity for a young person to announce or to work a camera or to direct or whatever it may be. And it was always about opportunities.
Well, and you think and you think too, Buzz, when you were doing that, when you guys started that, I mean, you look at that today and it's a no-brainer. With digital, you can do it without effort. Like you don't need a production truck per se to produce a mini TriCaster and two people is like, that'll do it. That's where, it is amazing that you didn't burn us out. but I think that's a testament of everybody that was there was at Western for the right reasons.
That's absolutely right. So let's talk about your transition into, because when you were graduating, you had this an opportunity, and you were one of the first. I know Eric Fry ended up going through our program, went to a similar type of program, I think, at the University of Illinois. But you were one of the first to stay here at WIU, and you got an opportunity to be a graduate assistant in athletics. How did that happen, and how did that impact you?
I mean, immense impact, and it goes back to you and Sharon entrusting me and Matt Workema with doing the broadcast for women's basketball. I had zero, and I mean zero, desire to go to grad school. Like I couldn't wait to be done with school and not be in class anymore, anything like that. Even though I had no job prospects lined up or whatever, I was going to move back home to Downers Grove and find a job in Chicago radio, for like $15,000 a year and have to live with my parents for 10 years. We're sitting at the women's basketball banquet that senior year. And that in and of itself, was pretty cool, like just to be invited to that. So we're sitting at a table, and the SID that traveled with women's basketball, the assistant SID at the time, Terry, was sitting there. And I think Todd Schultz, the assistant coach, might have been, we had a table of like basically the staff. We were all sitting there chatting away, and they had a couple vacancies for GA positions in the sports info office. And somebody said, "Hey, Brock, you should apply for that. You've already, done this work, type of thing." Totally naive to what sports info was versus broadcast or anything. And like Terry just like turns in this like stunned look, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, you totally should." And I said, "Okay, whatever." I didn't really like take it seriously. And the next day, Jason Kaufman, who was the longtime sports information director at Western, gives me a call. Says, "Brock, why don't you come in? We need to talk about this. We need to serious." And I walk in his office, and he just goes, "Look," he goes, because he was the SID for football and did some men's basketball. He kind of float around, but he goes, "Brock," he goes, I know we knew each other. He goes, I've seen what you've done, I've seen your work. He goes, "You absolutely can do this. You don't even like, if you want it, it's yours." It was about as simple as it went. So I didn't hesitate on it. I said, "Okay, yeah." I go, let's do this. We'll figure out. And I asked him, like, "Will I still be able to broadcast?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I want you to travel with MJ, with Michael Jones, and do some of the basketball. And maybe we can have you do some football sideline. And you got to cover some sports too." I said, "Yeah." Like all I heard was, "Yeah, you get to still be on the air." So I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in. Yeah, whatever else you got me to do, I'll do it." Well, everything else was the hard part. That was the really hard part of the job. But I became a sports information grad assistant. And, it was, again, nothing I sought out to do. I didn't have what I would consider to be the right writing skills. I could write, and you all taught me that. I had Don Norton's literal writing in my head all the time. Make sure you say more than, not over, because if you say over, they're looking at it like a fraction. And I'm like, none of that ever made sense. And like now it does. Now it's all coming back as I'm trying to write post-game recaps and stuff. And the voice of God, Don Norton, in my ear of like, don't say that, Brock, don't say that. And be sure to check out Farm King for their ads this week. But I've got that influence now coming back, and where again, Was it an AP writing class that I was taking in broadcasting? No, but I was writing for broadcast. And so now I had to write recaps. So I just took the broadcasting approach to it. Like, let's write how people would talk. Let's make it conversational. And that was kind of the cool thing, because Jason Kaufman was a very good writer. And so him and I didn't butt heads, but we had contrasting styles. And then one of the other GAs that came in was more of a journalist type writer. So Jason, being a great leader, rather than saying, hey, we're going to do it this way, he's like, gave everyone their own flair, let them kind of have their own voice with what they were doing. And that allowed me then to be bold enough to say, hey, Jason, I want to do some other things. I think this was 2010. And if I'm dating it right, that's right. I think the year that Twitter first came out. And so YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't, anywhere near what it was. And we would archive the games up in Memorial Hall. I had to do this as a GA. You guys were on the broadcast department. It would microwave up to Memorial Hall. Right. We had a crappy, and I mean crappy, computer up there to live stream. And we had to go up there before kickoff, start the stream, come back, do my job, and then after the game, walk back up to Memorial Hall to turn off the stream.
Nice.
And then that became an archived copy. So I'm talking with Jason. I said, well, Jason, I go, we can do more. Like I said, one, broadcasting, they've got clips, they've got, stuff there. So, but what if we did some clips? What if we did some interviews to get stuff out there? He's like, what do you mean? I said, we can get a little handy cam for a couple $100, and we can put together a little post-game thing ourselves. And he goes, okay, let's do it. So he, got some budget freed up. We got a kind of a production laptop. We just had a MacBook that we were going to run, Final Cut out of and cut some clips. And so then my second year, we started doing post-game interviews, but with the intent of, let's get them up online as quick as we can. If we got a basketball game on a Thursday night at 7, let's get a clip up at 10:30. Are people going to watch it? Maybe not that night, but they'll watch it the next day. Well, look at what's going on right now, media-wise. You don't even wait that long. You Facebook Live it. You get, you get it up there, it gets archived. But we were, I like to think that we kind of became visionary at that point. We didn't know Twitter was going to be what it was going to be. We didn't have the foresight for some of those things, but we also started changing our mindset of like, well, let's get content to people. Let's not make them come to a game. Let's not make them, let's get some stuff out there. So that second year in grad school, I got to go with the team, and I wasn't, the student broadcasters were still doing highlight clips and all that, but I go with the camera. I grab a couple of quick clips. You get Herb Donaldson running for a touchdown, and then you can pop that up. But we didn't know at the time. We had no idea at the time that we were like at the forefront of the digital media dump for athletics and getting stuff out there. I'll never forget we played Arkansas, the first game that Bobby Petrino coached at Arkansas, and we almost beat them. They scored with like 3 minutes to go to take their first lead of the game. We almost beat them, and the team wanted to get the heck out of there. Like they were like, it was a heartbreaking loss. It was one of those, you would have been on Sports Center, you would have been, and we didn't win it. Want to get out of there, and I'm trying to render video on the MacBook, and it's taking like an hour. And I'll never forget, I had to stop and start that rendering, I think 5 times in travel, because we tried to do it at the stadium, couldn't get it completed. Got to the airport, we had a delay there. So I'm like, okay, try to get it going. Couldn't happen. Pull out the laptop on the plane. I'm like, well, I can at least render the video to the computer. I'll be okay. And then when we get back, didn't work there. Get to the bus, my battery's dying because it's wearing down. We bus back to Macomb from the Quad Cities, still it doesn't work. So then I'm back in the office and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, if we would have won, I would have been like the biggest villain, because I had this little post game piece put together and we couldn't get it out. And that's just a change in technology of like, you wouldn't deal with that, but you had to render video to get it, to be able to post it to our video platform, which I don't remember what the web provider was at the time, but I was learning on the fly on things I had no idea about, but Western gave me that opportunity, allowed me to try those different things. And then I get done with grad school, and then I'm kind of, okay, I've asserted myself into this digital world. I think that's where I'm going to go. So I'm applying for jobs, jobs and internships mostly, but like, almost full-time pay internships, 1-year appointments. The USOC, I had interviewed a couple of times with the USOC, was looking good there. And then the mothership for me comes calling in the Chicago Bears. And if anyone's looking, I've got a Vince Lombardi thing over my shoulder here. I don't want to get in confusion. I'm from outside Chicago. I'm a Bears fan through and through. That was a gift to my grandfather, and it sits in my office, and it's Lombardi's "What It Takes to Be Number One" speech. So that's the only reason that's there, is because of my grandpa, who was also a Bears fan. But that's my little memento of him. So Bears fan, diehard Bears fan. Born in '85, which I think means whatever year I die, the Bears will win their next Super Bowl. But so born in '85, get this digital media internship position with them, and it was going to pay $1,500 a month or something. I could live with my parents, do that, commute back and forth. I go and interview at Hallis Hall. Like they're doing exactly what I talked about, like, or what I had done. They're like, go get some clips on the road. They had a full-time person. They're like, you'll meet this person at the airport when the team gets back and get the laptop from them and continue with posting content stuff. And I'm like, awesome. Like, this is exactly what it is. So I go do that interview, drive back to Macomb to pack up my office and my apartment to drive home. I'm packing up my office and I get a call from Jason Kaufman again. He says, hey, can you come down to Tim Van Alstein's office, who was the athletic director at the time? So I go down. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, just thinking, oh, maybe they just want to say bye. Like, I've been here 6 years, I'm like, that's a nice touch. Tim had gotten to know me, not, at a really personal level, but so I go down there, and Dwayne Roach is in there as well, who was the senior associate AD for fundraising. And they're like, Brock, have a seat. And okay. He said, how's the job hunt going? He said, well, I interviewed yesterday at Hallis Hall with the Bears. Feel really good about it. I think I'm going to get this internship. And Tim leans forward and he goes, well, what about a full-time job? He said, well, what do you mean, what about a full-time job? He goes, we need somebody to do football play-by-play. And they had a weird cycle for their director of marketing position. And he goes, we need both these things filled. And Jason has assured me you can do it. And he kind of gives Jason this look like, hey, this one's on you. And he goes, and Dwayne knows you well enough, because again, these are people I've been traveling with. They had been gone to women's basketball games. They had been on the bus or on the planes with football. They knew who I was. And that just came from that opportunity of starting with women's basketball. So fast forward, and because of that, because you guys weren't scared, you and Sharon and everyone weren't scared to say, Brock and Matt, you're going to get this thing going with women's basketball. Fast forward, 4 years later, I'm finishing my master's degree, and they're handing me a job because, got into a pinch, and they're like, didn't realize, that they were going to have both these positions vacant, and they needed to fill them quickly, because this was end of June, and you're talking about football season's right around the corner, and marketing and sponsorships and all that. And so that started my career in college athletics, because I was going to take that Bears position, no doubt about it. And who knows what that would have led to. But what I do know today, looking back on it, is it wouldn't have led to me being happy. It wouldn't have been the calling that was right for me. And so, overall, that's what Western has always been for me, is there's people that believed in me, and believed in what I was doing, and what potential was there. And Buzz, you're certainly at the top of that list, no doubt with that. But you and Tom, and Roger and Mike and Don Norton and Sharon, and Richard Ness, and I mean the list goes on and on of all these faculty members that never felt like professors. And I realized that when I went back and talked to friends from back home, and my wife went to Luther College, a liberal arts school here in Iowa, and she played softball there. And she obviously had connections with the coaches in the department and some faculty. But when I'd share stories with her, and she did her master's degree at Western, so she got to see it kind of firsthand. But when I shared stories with her and other friends and people I've run into now about what the broadcasting experience was like at Western Illinois, usually I get jaws dropped. Like when I talk about what our relationship was like with you guys, and the fact that one day Chad Reuter stole the remote for the mini disc player in Roger's class. And I really thought Roger was going to have a heart attack over this, because every time he'd hit play, Chad would hit the eject button, and the door would open up on the top of it. And I mean, we had him going for a good 10 minutes on this. And Roger's getting worked up, and he almost went to his Donald Duck voice. I think he was so mad, but the door keeps opening up on the top of it. He can't figure it out, and we're snickering, and then it gets funnier and funnier the more angry he gets. I'm like when I tell people, yeah, we pranked our professors in class. They go, "You did what?" like, and you still got your degrees? Or we're like, yeah, like it wasn't teacher student. It was always peer to peer. It always felt that way. And whether it was popping into one of your offices to have a chat, or, like I said, BSing with Tom while you're getting a camera checked out, or he's fixing something, whatever it was, or just hanging out, having ungodly amounts of Domino's pizza. Thanks to Jeff Mabry, by the way, at Western for always supporting, our waistlines in broadcasting. Whatever it was never this hierarchy. It was never this, well, here's the faculty sitting on their golden throne telling us what to do. Never like that. You guys were always treated us like people. And I think that's why, one, so many of us have been successful, because there was an insane amount of talent that you guys activated in what we did. But then even those and classmates of mine that have gotten out of the broadcast industry, I've seen the maturity and professionalism in them and where they've been successful. And I think it stems back to that, is that there was always the respect of authority. We always had that respect there, but it was never abused. It was never anything that we had to be scared of or anything like that. And I mean, I think that just made us all better professionals now in whatever we're doing, because you all as faculty just did that naturally. You were all good people, and that was very beneficial to me. And it's something that I've really tried to pass along now, working on a campus. I've believe it or not, I've actually had to teach a few classes as an adjunct instructor, and running the broadcast and stuff for a while here. I took the approach you all did, which is, students are people. They're people that are eager to learn and want to be involved, and treat them like people. Don't treat them like subordinates. Don't treat them like they don't know what they're doing. Engage, interact, and I'm guessing what the experience was for you guys, and because what it's been for me is learn from them, and that's been the best thing for me working in education, is I continually learn every day. I learn from the people I work with, and when I say that, I mean the students that I get to work with.
Yeah, well, you've grown into become a true leader, Brock, and I'm not surprised, because, as I said, there was this legacy that you were working on, not only as an undergrad, but as I mentioned, we established a 4+1 program with sport management based upon what you did.
Yeah,
because I saw that the success that you were having, and I said we should make this available. An easier transition for students like Brock that come here, and that we want to, hopefully guide into that area because of the success that you were showing. So I think that whether you knew it or not, I mean, what you did when you were traveling with the radio, and then when you went into graduate school, always a leader. And I'm not surprised at where you are and how successful you have become. And I'm proud of you, but I'm also, I'm so happy for you, and everything that you're doing there.
I appreciate that very much, Buzz. And I know that program has done wonders for people like Ryan Thomas and Sean Ingracia, and those names just pop right to the top. I know there's more, and I'm
Matt Fisher and
Matt Fisher. And I see the funny thing is, now I see these people at convention. Well, before COVID, when we actually could see people, and get fit. But I see these people out and around there. And you mentioned Eric Fry earlier. He's somebody who's become a contact that I'm, not regularly in touch with, but somebody that's involved there. And lots of people through Western that are working in college athletics now. Russell Hufftelling, not a broadcasting alum, but he worked for a year as an intern in the sports information office. And now he runs the ideation team at Oregon State University. And they're the only, I think, department in the country that use the term ideation, but basically they are media production, everything, social media, graphic, all that. And same thing. And while it wasn't directly in broadcasting, it's, I think the essence of Western Illinois is that if you come there, you don't get told no on trying things. You get those opportunities, and, creating things that are better now for students going forward is probably the best thing I can see, is that students have a different pathway to take now, and to find themselves, whether it's in the college athletics or pro sports or whatever it might be, and the understanding of where broadcasting and media production merges into those worlds, and recognizing that you don't have to just go and be a broadcaster, quote unquote, to use that broadcasting experience and to be a valuable professional to your industry.
Well, Brock, we hope to see you and your family again in Macomb sometime. I can't wait to see the kids because I just I'm excited for you and everything that's going on in your life, brother.
Appreciate it as always, Buzz. I more than I can ever say. I owe a lot of who I am and where I am to you, and many others, but especially to you, because like I said, you taught that first class and you were the one that said, hey, you can get a shift on the dog. And I'd like to think, because it's Western, anybody would have gotten that chance, but I can trace, that was the starting point for me. If I didn't do that, I don't know. I don't know if Brian Moore is saying, hey, this guy's got some talent, and you're saying, okay, let's try this. And then down the road, you never know where things are going to fall. But I'm very grateful to you and to all of Western Illinois. And there's a million other names that I didn't even get to mention today, and people outside of broadcasting that had a profound impact on me.
Absolutely. There's so many people that contribute. And we are thankful for this great institution. We're thankful for you for being on the podcast today. And make sure I want to say thank you to all the weekly viewers out there for tuning in and watching and making sure that our alumni are celebrated. We want to make sure to hear from our alums. If you have somebody that you want to recommend, we're always glad to talk with anybody. And we hope that you continue to watch and listen to the podcast and just generally support not only WIU, but our department. So until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.